Speaker.
Honourable Bill Goss.
Mr. Speaker, ask any farmer what the most important thing has been for them in the last 5 years. They'd say winning access to the fastest growing market in the world, China, and that free trade agreement where exports have trebled from $2 to $6 billion a year was negotiated under a Labor government. Ask any educationalist the most important thing that ever happened to education was opening New Zealand up to international students, and that was done by a very far-sighted Minister of Education in the Labor government before that, and I'm too modest to acknowledge who that might have been. Mr. Speaker, where Kate Wilkinson got it wrong was she said that David Parker was talking about personalities. David Parker wasn't talking about personalities. He was talking about honesty and integrity, and the fact that this national government clings to power on the back of 2 MPs whose credibility and integrity in the eyes of the public have been absolutely shattered. And John Key, who promised higher standards from his ministers, has put his fingers over his nose and kept John Banks and Peter Dunn as supporters of his government because he wants to cling to power. I want to say this about John Banks. He turned up at Kim.com's mansion, reckoned he couldn't remember seeing the fattest man in the biggest house that he visited by helicopter. He asked for $50,000. Oh, please, Mr. Kim.com, 2 cheques of $25,000 so I don't have to declare it. That wasn't the law anyway. And then he told the public that the donations were anonymous. That broke the law, and that was a lie, and that man has no integrity. John Key said this: to make a contribution, you have to have integrity, and to have integrity, there has to be a directness and fullness in your answers, quote, unquote. Well, perhaps he should give that advice to Mr. Dunn. Mr. Dunn would not pass over in confidence to David Henry the texts of his messages to a journalist because it would have incriminated him as being the person who leaked the document on the GCSB. And what did Mr. Key say about that 2 months ago? He said these leaks, quote, undermine the integrity of the entire public service. He said that he, Mr. Key, had a responsibility to get to the bottom of that if he can. You know, the last thing Mr. Key wants to know is the truth about who leaked that document. He knows, John Hayes knows, everybody in this chamber knows, and New Zealand knows that those documents were leaked by Peter Dunn, and that's why he would not, in confidence, give those texts to the head of the inquiry, David Henry. When Mr. Dunn took his oath of office, and the ministers in the House will recognise this, he swore in front of his colleagues and in front of the Governor-General that I will not, quote, I will not directly nor indirectly reveal such matters as shall be debated in the Executive Council and committed to my secrecy, but that I will in all things be a true and faithful counsellor, so help me God. That was the oath that Peter Dunn took as a member of the Executive, and he breached that solemn promise. He broke that promise. And I want to know this from Mr. Key. Why is it that when staff members at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, without any evidence against them, are suspected of leaking information, they have to swear on oath that they didn't, but Peter Dunn was never required to say on oath that he did not leak that document? John Key could require that of him tomorrow. He could require that of him tomorrow. But John Key does not want to know the truth, because he knows that a man that broke the oath of office is not a man fit to sit in this Parliament, and yet he, Mr. Key, relies on Mr. Dunn and Mr. Banks to keep them in office. There is a stench over there of members of Parliament who have breached their basic responsibilities. And I say this about Mr. Dunn. He is no whistleblower. Whistleblowing is an honourable occupation where you throw sunlight on things that it's in the interest of the public to know. Peter Dunn had no such honourable motive. John Key keeps those people in the House when they have lost their integrity and the public have lost confidence in them.
Order. Chris Ockenball.
Thank you.